Well, a very good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. The date is the 9th of February 2023. You're watching M Live on NTV. My name is Zainab Ismail. Thank you so much for joining us. And we will be taking a look at some of the top stories this hour. And of course, what's on the dailies of all the newspapers here. And of course, later on in this conversations, we will be taking a look at the state of the 2/3 gender question. Where are we? And will the 13th Parliament get it right? That is a question we hope to have a discussion around. But like I said, let's begin with those stories now. And we will begin with some politics. Now, President William Ruto, for the second time in a month, has sat down with more than 30 Jubilee Party leaders barely 24 hours after he met leaders from ODM and Raila Odinga's home turf in Nyanza. Already questions have begun to linger on whether money has changed hands to ditch the Azimio la Umoja coalition for the government of the day. Brian Mushiri has more.
Recent meetings called by President William Ruto with the opposition has elicited mixed reaction through the political divide. Many turning up the volume that the legislatures could have been bought to work with the government, while others holding the view that working with the government could be the only way to ensure their political pledges to the electorate are achieved. Last month, President William Ruto shared breakfast with a host of Jubilee Party leaders for the first time, something that was viewed as a plan to throw off opposition leader Raila Odinga. The meeting was set up on the same day that Raila was expected to jet back into the country from South Africa. On Tuesday, the president met parliamentarians from ODM drawn from Luo Nyanza. In all these meetings, the president and the leaders continue to insist that they are working meetings. It is, however, common in this country for the opposition to knock from the back door to work with the government. It has been reported that some regions have lagged behind on development for lack of proper alignment with the government. According to governance and political analyst Vivian Ta, it is betrayal of the highest order to the voter who are still firm in their respective parties.
I was there, I heard everything they spoke about. It was a follow-up on the development projects that the president had promised when he was in Homa Bay, Kisumu and Siaya.
The leader of minority in parliament, Opiyo Wandayi, acknowledged Ruto as the president of the Republic of Kenya. What are we supposed to do?
NTV has, however, learnt that some ODM and Nyanza leaders feel it is time for Raila Odinga to retire and let others take the mantle. President William Ruto and his deputy have been termed as the masterminds of the scratch my back, I scratch yours relationship. In every instance where they have gone to opposition territory, the duo has not shied away from reminding the voters and their leaders of the last election outcome.
Rais ametafuta, ameona mtu ya kuamini kabisa mambo ya serikali yake, utawala na usalama ni huyu kijana Raymond Omolo kutoka hapa kwenu. Senator Oburu, the deep state you are looking for, the real one, ni yenu sasa.
Mulinipatia kura, lakini kidogo, lakini si mbaya. Mimi nasema asante sana. Kwa ile kidogo mulinipatia, mimi nasema asante sana. Tunaelewana? Na musikie, musingoje serikali ingine. Hakuna serikali ingine inakuja. Serikali ni hii.
The leaders from the opposition that have recently shared a table with President William Ruto insist that they are loyal to their parties, but indicate that they have you, the electorate's best interest at heart. Begging the questions, must one dine and wine with the government of the day to have any development splashed their way? Or is the government of the day playing the politics of tokenism? Or better still, has our politics really matured? Brian Mushiri, NTV at Parliament Buildings.
Well, the shift of allegiance by a section of Nyanza leaders to support President William Ruto has exposed cracks within the Azimio la Umoja coalition, and Raila Odinga seemingly ceding ground in his backyard, while history has treated those who have gone against Odinga's political alignment in Nyanza harshly. The future is uncertain whether Nyanza region is fully behind Raila Odinga, or is it the beginning of the end of a block of voting formation in the region?
President William Ruto's meeting with 9 members of parliament from the ODM party in State House has lifted the lead on Raila Odinga's fallout with key political lieutenants from his backyard. And although the leaders from Nyanza insist that the talks with President William Ruto are exclusively centered on development projects, political proponents insist that there is more than meets the eye and remains unspoken. This move by the 9 MPs has been interpreted as a revolt against Raila Odinga in his political turf, the Nyanza region.
I think what's happening is that the leadership of Luo Nyanza are struggling to find their political space in the emerging political dispensation in Kenya. This is in the context of 2 major events. One, that there was high expectation this time more than any time before that Raila Odinga was going to be the president of Kenya. And number 2, that now we have a new president and we have Raila Odinga as the leader of Azimio.
It is not the first time that Raila Odinga has been forsaken by his key allies. Siaya Governor James Orengo deserted Raila at a crucial time in 2002 when he vied for presidency after Raila Odinga threw his weight behind Mwai Kibaki. Orengo performed dismally in the elections and lost his Ugenya MP seat.
In history, those who have thought differently from Raila Odinga in Luo Nyanza have no better political biography. I think all of them that we know of, those who have taken Raila Odinga head on, I think as you've read in the social media, they have already written their political obituaries.
As Raila Odinga's loyalists cast aspersions on the move by the elected leaders under the ODM party, pundits have brushed off the ripple effect of the move by the leaders on the ground and in Raila Odinga's backyard, arguing that he remains the de facto kingpin and commands the region's unwavering support.
It's a reality. The Luo people and the more or less Azimio regions, those areas where Azimio and ODM as following, they treat Raila as their leader, and it is very difficult to wrestle those regions from Raila.
Raila Odinga, having lost his 5th stab at the presidency and decrying that the elections were a sham, his next political move is one that has left Kenyans guessing as he holds rallies in Nairobi to chart a way forward with his supporters. But with his support base falling apart, is this the beginning of the end for Raila Odinga's solid command in Nyanza?
Raila has also been in this game for some time. I don't think he has been employed somewhere longer than 10 years. He has spent most of his time in politics, and I think it's one thing that he understands so well.
Raila Odinga's meeting with his key political allies, including former Mombasa Governor Hassan Joho and Suna East MP Junet Mohamed, who disappeared from the political arena facing backlash for Odinga's loss after the election, is not a promising matrix according to pundits.
He's doing same things, same way, expecting different results. I don't think it will ever happen. That's what I think. Yeah.
Nyanza region has 6 counties which have voted overwhelmingly for Raila Odinga in the past elections. Luo Nyanza has a voter basket of over 2 million supporters. President William Ruto poses a threat in making inroads in Nyanza with recent visits and talks with leaders from the region. Melita Oletenges, NTV.
Well, a little away from politics, in a daring move, bandits have attacked Lemaiue in Baringo County as Interior Cabinet Secretary Kithure Kindiki begins his 4-day tour of Baringo County. Kindiki's return to Baringo follows the death of 4 people earlier in the week due to banditry, as Bridget Sangana now reports.
On Wednesday afternoon, bandits struck Lemaiue, Baringo County, stealing 60 goats. This was the second attack here in under a month. The attack happening while Interior Cabinet Secretary Kithure Kindiki was meeting security chiefs from West Pokot, Baringo and Elgeyo Marakwet counties alongside the Rift Valley Regional Commissioner Abdi Hassan after 4 people died in separate attacks in Baringo and Turkana earlier in the week. On Tuesday, the CS declared war on bandits as he toured Nyandarua County.
Kama vile tumetangaza vita dhidi ya waizi wa ng'ombe kule Rift Valley, tumetangaza vita dhidi ya wale magaidi wanaohangaisha sisi katika sehemu za mipaka.
But Wednesday's bandit attack seemed like an act of defiance. CS Kindiki declined to speak with journalists after a day-long meeting, instead promising to hold a news conference on Thursday morning. The CS has toured Turkana, Baringo and Elgeyo Marakwet counties, where he ordered for ground and aerial surveillance, but the killings and theft of livestock continue unabated. In the meantime, police reservists are said to be tracking the stolen livestock while engaging the bandits in a gunfight. CS Kindiki will be in Baringo for the next 3 days as part of efforts to address the banditry in the region. Bridget Ghana, NTV, Nakuru.
Now, the Anti-Corruption Court has allowed the Director of Public Prosecution to withdraw a 159 million shilling fraud case against former Kenya Power and Lighting Company Managing Director Ken Tarus due to lack of evidence. Ruth Sarmoe has more.
According to the Director of Public Prosecution, Nurdin Haji, there was no evidence linking the ex-Kenya Power and Lighting Company boss, Ken Tarus, to the 159 million shillings fraudulent tender during his tenure. Tarus had been charged alongside 8 others for illegally awarding contracts to companies that resulted in the loss of the monies 4 years ago. Nurdin, however, indicates that the case pitting former finance manager Harun Karisa, the network's general manager Daniel Tare, the general manager for supply chain Daniel Muga, and other tender committee members who are Bernard Muturi, Evelyn Amondi, Noah Omondi, John Njehia and James Muriuki will continue. Tarus now joins the growing list of top individuals who are now walking free after the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution found them with no case to answer since William Ruto assumed office. They include Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, who was acquitted of a money laundering case, Public Service Cabinet Secretary Aisha Jumwa, who was cleared of murder charges, KRA Board Chair Anthony Moura, and KPC Director Manager Joe Sang, who are also cleared of corruption charges. The former Kenya Power manager Ben Chuma was also cleared of the 4.5 billion shillings corruption case, among others. Ruth Sarmoe, NTV.
Now, Boaz Wanjala, the main suspect in the arson attack that killed 7 people in Gimari village in Runyenjes, has appeared before the Embu High Court for the 2nd time. Through his lawyer, Wanjala requested to be released on bail, a request that was rejected due to the sensitivity of the case.
Early morning on Wednesday, Boaz Wanjala appeared before Justice Lucy Njuguna of Embu High Court. All the 7 murder charges were read to him and he denied all the accounts. The court did not honor his request for release on bail as the request was not submitted to the court in an official manner and the court lacked sufficient materials to make a determination on his request.
In the circumstances, I directed that a formal application be filed for bail, so that all the material can be placed before the court, because as I sit here, the court has not been supplied with sufficient material on the basis of which I can make a finding or a ruling on whether to grant this person bail.
The suspect will remain in custody until February 20th, when the court will rule on his request for release on bail.
Between now and then, the probation officer will file a bail report. In the meantime, the accused person will be remanded in custody pending the formal application.
Wanjala remains the main suspect in the arson case where 7 family members lost their lives in October last year. Ken Nyaga, NTV.
Now, manufacturers have rejected the proposed review of retail power tariffs, citing an increase in the cost of doing business, which they say will make Kenya less competitive. The Kenya Association of Manufacturers say the proposed increment will occasion a rise in the cost of electricity by between 3 shillings and 50 cents and 5 shillings per unit of production. Energy sector stakeholders have proposed to the market regulator the consumption by commercial and industrial players taking up more than 15,000 kilowatt hours monthly be billed at 16 shillings and 48 cents, up from the current 12 shillings per unit, reflecting a 37% increase. The association says manufacturers are already grappling with high taxes and need reprieve in the cost of electricity. Well, the National Treasury is proposing to slash the targeted borrowing for the current financial year by 68 billion shillings. Data in the published supplementary budget estimates shows that the planned borrowing for the period ending June 2023 could be revised downward to 794 billion shillings, 8% lower than is currently planned for. To realize this, the National Treasury is proposing that domestic borrowing be slashed from 581.7 billion to 415 billion, while external borrowing is earmarked for an increase from the current 281 billion shillings to 379 billion, posting a 35% increase. All right, and time to take a look at our dailies this morning. We'll begin with the Daily Nation, of course. This is what we have on the very front page of the Daily Nation. Matiang'i under police siege, a day of drama. Former Interior Minister Fred Matiang'i was a man under siege last evening amid reports the police had raided his home in Karen in Nairobi. But the reason of the siege, however, was not immediately clear. This is a full page on story on page 6. I'm going to get to the 6th page of the Daily Nation to just get that full report there and take a look at exactly what the situation is and look at that full report. All right, so just give me a moment here as I fix my e-paper, and you can actually get our e-paper on enation.co.ke. You can be able to get our e-paper there and read all the stories in a moment. All right, so right after that, this is where we have the full page, 6th page of the Daily Nation. Former Interior Minister Fred Matiang'i, a man under siege last night amid reports the police were planning to raid his home in Karen, Nairobi. The reason, however, was not immediately clear. Initial reports suggesting that the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission officers were the ones after the former CS, but the EACC chief executive, that's Twalib Mbarak, told the nation last night that his team had nothing to do with the reported raid. ODM leader Raila Odinga and Dr. Matiang'i's lawyers, led by Danstan Omari, say police had showed up at the former minister's residence without explaining the reason for the mission. However, a source at the scene told the nation that Dr. Matiang'i had been informed about the impending raid. The officers did not access the former cabinet's minister's house. And the lawyer, that is Danstan Omari, says that they have received strict orders from former President Uhuru Kenyatta to head early to court to seek anticipatory bail for all former CSs. The lawyer will escort Matiang'i to the nearest police station to record his statement. Also remember, as Odinga was there yesterday, he rushed to Matiang'i's home on getting the reports of the developments about 10 p.m. He criticized President William Ruto's government, saying that that was not the way to treat what he said a senior citizen and former interior minister. So this is the latest with regard to exactly what happened yesterday. And we will be hearing more from the legal representation that is headed by Danstan Omari, who was there, gave a press briefing last evening. And just taking a look at some of the developments there. All the functions, Dr. Matiang'i, remember he was quite a key figure in the Uhuru administration, and whose term ended last year. All right, so we'll be bringing you more details exactly with regard to exactly what exactly is happening here with the former cabinet secretary when and as we get our crew is already on ground, and we'll be following up exactly on the situation on ground. All right, still on the Daily Nation, KEMSA to lose procurement function in planned changes. The ministry will leverage on warehousing and distribution capacity while eliminating its procurement drawbacks. That's the National Drug Distributor, which says it may lose its procurement function. Health Cabinet CS Susan Nakhumicha telling Nation yesterday that plans are underway to transfer the procurement mandate to other entities. All right. MPs also set to meet today over junior high fees. The National Assembly Education Committee has convened an urgent meeting today over the confusion that has marred transition of learners to the junior secondary school. The MPs have criticized Education Cabinet Secretary Ezekiel Mashogu, saying he's not in touch with the reality that parents are currently facing with regards to that transition to JSS. All right. We're going to move ahead to see what else is in the Daily Nation. The Forgotten Elderly of Mount Kenya, a story of loneliness and despair. Statistics indicating the number of aging people is growing rapidly around the country. But what really is the situation? That story, you can find it on the 3rd page of the Daily Nation. And to some politics on the 4th page, Raila calls crisis meeting as allies warm up to Ruto. The Azimio leader Raila Odinga is today expected to chair crisis talks following mounting resistance to his anti-government protest rallies and poaching of opposition lawmakers by President Ruto. The parliamentary group meeting that is formed by the Azimio La Umoja One Kenya coalition members is coming on the eve of the first anti-Ruto rally outside Nairobi, which is scheduled for Mavoko in Machakos County. It also comes on the back of a sustained onslaught by the president, who's met opposition legislators in successive days. We just saw a number of legislators yesterday at State House, and that has created quite a buzz within the political scene. Jubilee members asking Ruto to back off on Uhuru. President William Ruto yesterday met the Azimio lawmakers for the 2nd consecutive day as he stepped up his efforts to scuttle opposition-led anti-government protests. It's during that meeting that the Jubilee Party MPs implored the head of state to stop hounding his predecessor, Uhuru Kenyatta, even as the president secured their promise that they were not party to the protest rallies. The lawmakers also distanced their party leader, Kenyatta, from the organization of the meeting. You can see a number of faces there during that meeting. Now, that happened at State House, and State House did announce that President Ruto met what they said more than 30 Jubilee lawmakers, and this is right after holding a day after holding meetings with the ODM 9 ODM lawmakers drawn from the Luo Nyanza region. All right, we're going to move ahead to see what else is in the Daily Nation. We've taken a look at that report, and we'll be following up on the developments as well. 19.6 billion illegally spent on salaries. This is according to the Auditor General Nancy Gathungu, who said this. This is a new report that shows that 34 counties have breached the law and paid nearly 20 billion in salaries illegally, escalating the runaway public wage bill and underlining the urgency to weed out ghost workers. Now, the extra spending on salaries outside the law also reduces the amount counties can channel to development programs. This is according to the report by the Auditor General on counties' use of funds in 2020-2021, which also shows that 34 devolved units went against the public finance management law that caps spending on salaries by any public entity at 35% of revenues. We can see some of the counties here. Mombasa County at 37%, Lamu 37%, Taita Taveta 40%, and we're getting from the report, of course, the wage bill and then the excesses in terms of shillings. Mombasa there, Lamu, Taita, Garissa, Meru, Tharaka Nithi, and gives you a full view of all the counties and how they've managed to spend the total county revenues. All right, and We can say, I believe these are the last 3 counties based on the Controller of Budget Report 2020-2021. You can get this full report here. It's inside the Daily Nation. And Rashid wants to have case heard by magistrate. Remember that cop, the Pangani police officer accused of killing 2 young people in Eastleigh, Nairobi 6 years ago? Well, he wants a review of how the murder cases are tried by asking a judge to direct that such cases be heard by magistrate courts countrywide. He's asking Justice Kanyi Kimondo to refer his case to a magistrate court. Sergeant Rashid Ahmed said a judgment by the 3 judges on the 27th of November 2020 required that murder cases be heard by magistrates first before being referred to the High Court. That is on the 7th page of the Daily Nation. I'm going to wind up very quickly on the Daily Nation as well. This is what we have. Nasir's port tax plan hits headwinds. The Mombasa County government's plan to tax cargo at the Mombasa port has run into headwinds after Attorney General Justin Muturi termed it illegal and unconstitutional. This is with regard to an advisory that was dated the 23rd of January, addressed to Governor Abdul Somad Sharif Nasir and copied to the Roads and Transport Ministry officials. Muturi saying Mombasa County has no mandate to impose a levy on any goods imported into the country. And Muturi also argues that the move could also undermine national economic policies. That report is on the 8th page of the Daily Nation. Okay, so this, let me just take one more look at another story here with regards to the environment. Losses as ocean slowly swallowing Kipini village, and the story there by Stephen Oduor. And environmentalists are saying planting of mangrove trees along the coast will help to end the problem. Let me look at the Business Daily. This is what we have on the front page of Business Daily. Ruto allocates Uhuru hefty 678.5 million retirement parks. The Treasury has allocated the former president that amount of money for his pension and retirement parks for the year to June, including a fully furnished office. He also will be enjoying limousines and salaries for scores of aides. The allocation is contained in President William Ruto's first supplementary budget, which has seen the new administration tweak its spending and budget deficit estimates for the current fiscal year. The 678.57 million includes 655.32 million for Mr. Kenyatta's office, while 23.47, equivalent to 1.95 million monthly, will be wired as pension to the former president's bank account. Also adjacent to that, employers to take the biggest hit as NSSF implements the act. Now, Kenyan employers have called on the government to clarify whether the new National Social Security Fund deductions will be affected on basic pay or the total emoluments, as they prepare to take a major hit after the court ended a 7-year impasse. And MPs are also set to shut down a plan to transfer Rivertex to Naivasha Special Zone. You can get that on the Business Daily. And finally, pension funds seek safety in treasury bonds. The number of pension schemes adopting a conservative investment approach that is heavy on risk-free government bonds doubled last year as they sought to protect returns against the volatility of both the local and overseas equities market. All right. Taifa Leo, this is what we have on Taifa Leo. Majangili watemea Waziri Mate. All right, this is Waziri Kithure Kindiki there. Majangili waonekana kuongeza kasi ya kuangaisha wakazi wa kaunti 6 za eneo la Kerio Valley licha ya waziri wa usalama Kithure Kindiki kutoa onyo kali na kupiga kambi huko. That is a story that is inside the Taifa Leo, especially not just for Swahili readers, but also those who want to get a full report on that. Still on Taifa Leo, waliuawa na magaidi Nigeria wagonga 102. Waathiriwa walikuwa walinzi ndani wa raia wa kawaida. Rais Buhari ameahidi hatua kali. That's some of the regional news also contained in this newspaper. Okay, so on the East African, we still have that copy there, which runs between February 4th and February 10th. We'll be getting another East African copy tomorrow. But this is still what we'll be looking at. Who's hoarding pay for Somali peacekeepers? Ugandan MPs lift lead on simmering row over soldiers' allowances as morale dips in Somalia mission amid preparations for a drawdown. That is pages 4 and 5 of the East African. All right, so let me just head back to our front page on the Daily Nation, which is quite something that we'll continue to look at because this is a developing story. But look, I'm not alone in studio. Allow me to introduce my panelists this morning and maybe just get quick comments from them with regard to this top story here before we get into our conversation this morning. I'm joined, of course, this morning by Florence Mashio, Gender Equity Champion. A very good morning. Karibu sana to the studio.
Good morning. Indeed.
We also have Momina Bonaya, who's the Isiolo County Woman Member of Parliament. A very good morning. Welcome to the studio, as well as Anne Makobo, is the founder of Impact on Lives Africa. Karibu sana, a very good morning. Before I get into the conversation, this is something that was quite shocking yesterday evening. We covered it as we saw a lot of drama outside the residence of the former CS Interior, CS Fred Matiang'i. We are not really completely aware or sure of whether who the officers were sent by and who the officers were, because at first we did hear that it was officers drawn from the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. However, the EACC CEO Twalib Mbarak says that he is not aware of any sanctioned raid on the former CS. Let me begin with you, Anne. What do you make of the latest development with regard to this? Do you read anything?
Good morning. Yes, indeed. From where we sit as Kenyans, I think these are things that should not happen. Yes, at a personal level, I would say it is purely unconstitutional in total disregard of the whatever it is, I think it is, they need to communicate in advance. There are better ways of making arrests. It should be communicated. So just waking up or waiting until very late at night so as to go and arrest, and more so a person of his stature, having been a cabinet secretary for Interior, it is purely unethical, uncalled for. They should have done it better.
All right. Momina Mheshimiwa, what do you make of this? Do you read some politics into it?
Thank you, Zainab. I think I'm a little bit saddened by, what is happening, because I've worked with Dr. Matiang'i when he was a cabinet secretary Interior, and seeing what is happening could actually make anybody feel threatened, because we keep on saying we've got institutions and we should let it be independent in carrying out its mandate. And I don't see any reason why we should be doing things, late in the evening or at night. If it's not witch hunt, surely, why pursue immediate former cabinet secretary in such a manner? Supposing there was an issue that needed to be followed, was that the best way to do it? No. So I think for us, we should respect institutions, should stick to their mandate, and they should not let anybody else from any corner misuse their powers. That's what I feel.
All right. Florence, what do you make of it?
Thank you. I agree with my sisters. If you're going to arrest, there are proper channels of arresting. If there's an issue, there's a way of communicating the same. I think this reminds me when I was growing up in the Moi era, where you could hear, so-and-so's father has disappeared and your parents are talking in hushed tones. And so I saw that playing. I'm like, oh, after the 2010 constitution, is this still happening? So I think it would be great if the government assured Kenyans that there is no witch hunt going on, and just do things in a proper way, whatever it is that they need to do. If it is an arrest, if it's questioning, it's whatever. I mean, everybody thought it's Anti-Corruption Commission. I was wondering, why would anti-corruption show up at somebody's house at night? I mean, you can still arrest people during the day. They've not left the country. So would like to see this issue unfold and get clarity from the government, because I always say, my mom used to say, serikali na mkono mrefu, so serikali should be knowing what is going on.
Right.
So we are expecting the government to explain to us what's going on.
Right.
And to allay fears, like my sister has said, that, you know, we do things with decorum as a nation.
All right.
Yeah.
And we'll continue just following up on that report as well, just to get a clear picture of what the situation really is on. All right. So, like I said, our topic this morning, it will be centered on the issue of the 2/3 gender question. Now, the gender principle passed in the 2010 Constitution was an unintended consequence of the underrepresentation of the women gender consistently in all arms of government since independence. Now, Article 27(8) requires that the state to take legislative measures to implement the principle that not more than 2/3 of the members of elective and appointive bodies shall be of the same gender. But for 10 years since we adopted the new dispensation, the bill has remained quite elusive. Now, all eyes are on the 13th Parliament as they resume sittings on Tuesday next week with a memorandum from the head of state urging members of Parliament to implement the constitutional threshold for gender representation. And that is what we have. That's Article 27(8) on equality and freedom from discrimination, which provides that particular statement in terms of the legislative arm of the government to be able to implement it. All right, so that is what we will be coming back to discuss. We're going to take a very short break here on AM Live. My panelists, I'll be reintroducing them in a moment when we come back. But you can be part of this conversation. The hashtag we're using this morning is AM Live, NTV at NTV Kenya, at Zainab Ismail. We're back in just a short while. Stay with us.
Room has no doors or windows.
I think it's a staff room because it has more things occupied.
I think it's an egg because it doesn't have any openings.
And you're beautiful just the way you are.
So this is the sushi chef. So this is the sushi chef.
So this is the sushi chef. So this is the sushi chef.
So this is the sushi chef. So this is the sushi chef.
He's action packed in sister challenge. Looking dog for living large. Triple cloning. T-Rexing. Royal throning. Johnny Xing. You never know what's coming next. Cause it's Johnny.
Grow your biashara by accessing loans, investment options, convenient banking, network opportunities, and so much more. Njoo tukujenge. Visit any one of our 93 branches countrywide. Family Bank is regulated by the Central Bank of Kenya.
Pata taarifa teke na e-paper. Stay in the know on the go. Getting the full story bila ngori. To sign up, choose your preferred subscription. Use the promo code SUBZ22 to get 20% off and pay. Get your favorite newspaper and enjoy the truth anywhere, anytime. For inquiries, email epaper@ke.nationmedia.com or call 0790 111 111. Subscribe today and get your taarifa teke.
I'm Julius Kipngetich. I will be one of the speakers at the Lake House in Tigoni. This is a conversation we are going to be having about men. There are many things we need to talk about ourselves so that we can strengthen us, we can strengthen our families, we can strengthen our friendships as men. You never live long enough to make all the mistakes others have made. It's always good to learn from others, and this event in Tigoni is about learning from each other, our experiences, our joys, our laughters, our pains, and together with these experiences we can grow. See you then on the 25th of February, Lake House, Tigoni.
Claiming your assets is easy. Simply visit UFAA website www.ufaa.go.ke or dial *361# or visit Huduma Center near you.
All right, welcome back to the program. You're watching M Live on NTV, and let me just introduce my panelists this morning. Florence Mashio, Gender Equity Champion, Mumina Bonaya, Isiolo County Woman Member of Parliament, and Anne Makobo, the founder of Impact on Lives Africa. The question this morning is on the 2/3 gender rule. Let's delve into that, which, by the way, continues to remain elusive. In Parliament, this bill has been presented about 9 times. It has failed. This will be the 10th time that this bill is introduced in Parliament. But what is the future? Is it positive? Is it optimistic? That's what we want to talk about. And to begin with, in order to set the context, is looking back 14 years back when we adopted the new constitutional dispensation. The constitution, the framers of the constitution had a very clear agenda on why we needed the 2/3 gender principle in the constitution. But let me begin with you, Florence. Why are we still talking about this? 9 attempts that have failed 14 years later since the adoption of a new dispensation. Why are we still having this conversation? Take us back to, first of all, why we needed this as part of the constitution, and why we have failed for this, this duration until now.
I think if we only look at just the last election that we've had, if I can take Kenyans there, we only have 208 women and 1,722 men in terms of representation. That already in numbers, if you do basic maths, we are not where we are supposed to be as a nation. Since 2010 constitution, the idea was to ensure that those people who have been marginalized are able to get opportunities. People with disability, women who had never had positions of power to be in decision-making positions. And simply because when you're in decision-making positions, you have the power to legislate, you have the power to talk about finances and budgets, and you have the power to speak about your issues because you are on the table. But looking at the patriarchal nature of our country, you find that it has been a struggle since independence to actually get women in Parliament. We've tried formulas after the 2010 constitution. We've been able to implement every other thing, but we are struggling in the area of having representation of women or special interest groups, as I call them. And so, as a nation, if we are here, I don't know what we are telling our daughters about their possibility of being able to be part of decision making in this country, to be seated on the table of power in this country. Why? If you look at the statistics that we have in voting, you have about 48% are women, and then men are 50 plus something percent in terms of voters registered. So even there, we are, having problems. And the challenges that we've had as a nation, and I'm sure my sister here who's been an MP knows that there are many bottlenecks that stop women from getting into positions, elective positions. So all those bottlenecks, first of all, the constitution envisioned that we should at least create affirmative action to get us to a place of equity. Because equity just means that we all did not start from the same footing. The men started a long time ago. The women only showed up in Parliament, after years of struggle. And so because of that, we have to have affirmative action. And that's why this 2010 constitution envisioned. But for a country, for all these years, we have struggled to actually make this possible. If we miss it on count 10, then I don't know what we are saying. What is it so difficult for us to just pass a threshold that allows that any gender, because at some point in this life, the way women are coming up, and the way we are taking our girls to school, and the way we are telling our girls, you can make it and you can do it. It might not happen tomorrow, but in future it will happen. And one day you will find a place where, oh, you mean the women are more. So if we can correct it now, we are not just correcting for women, we are correcting for any gender that will be disadvantaged in future. And so our past does not speak well of how we take care of women and how we push for women to be in decision-making positions. So that's why we are where we are. Patriarchal nature and the bottlenecks that exist in party systems, the challenges that exist in financing, the challenges that exist in SGBV when women come to vie, and she will tell you also, all those bottlenecks are the reason why women are not where they are, but also the patriarchal nature and the social construction of our nation allows us to continually push women down. Yeah.
And let me get to you. I mean, first of all, there's been a lot of focus on the issue of political representation. Now, before we get into that, how do you think we're faring in the other sectors, just a little away from the political representation?
Purely what our observation has been is that indeed there's a huge gap for women representation in matters leadership and also decision-making positions. We are underprivileged because our men counterparts always have the muscle, and they feel that because they started earlier than we did, they have all the rights, of which it's a pure infringement in our constitution. We feel that it's time that all spheres in the appointments, leadership of be it companies or any other platform, women's voice should be heard because we are the majority. Besides, it is already entrenched in our constitution. It's time that we are given our right. So the gaps are massive, yes, and it's time we get out of this quagmire because indeed we feel it. Yes.
Mheshimiwa Mumina, Parliament has been, accused of derailing this process, derailing the enactment of the two-thirds principle. When we're talking about now the 13th Parliament in place, before we get into that memorandum that was sent by the President, how has, from your own description, because you're also a lawmaker, how has Parliament added to the disadvantage of the gender equity in the country, and not just about women, but it's the gender, both men and women, in this, in terms of equalizing and operationalizing this bill?
Thank you, Zainab. We can't look at Parliament in isolation. Parliament has got representatives of people who are elected at local level, coming to Parliament with the same attitude, same prejudice, same disadvantage that always keeps pushing back any gain by women. And the gain we are talking about is what the Constitution has given us, saying we should secure affirmative action to ensure that there is proper participation of women in leadership. And by addressing participation of women in leadership, like my sister said, we also get to address the bottlenecks that they experience in other spheres like social and economic spheres. But naturally, there will always be pushback. At community level, we've experienced it while running for office, where you encounter decision by clan elders saying this seat is for a man, so a woman cannot, vie for a governorship or a senatorship or a constituency MP.
So it begins at the,
it starts at that level, at family level, at community level, all the way to national level. So the same men and women sitting in Parliament are the ones who are again perpetuating, that belief, that practice, that, push that ensures that, things remain the way they are, the status quo. So it's not an easy task. So we are not looking at Parliament in isolation in terms of, what are the traits of people we have in Parliament. So we are dealing with...
But they're the ones who've been given the mandate.
We have the mandate.
Right.
We have the mandate, but the attitude, the behavior, the beliefs, the norms, and everything else is the same that we always practice within a community. So that explains actually why we failed 9 times. And we are hoping this time we will succeed. It's not because so much has changed, but because this is a key fundamental, rights that, is entrenched in the Constitution. And as a country, if you look at East African countries, I think Kenya is the only country, with our giant economic status and GDP, yet to realize 2/3. And like my sister said, this is not about a woman. The tables can be turned. Next time it could be men fighting for those spaces. So how will they justify it? So I think for us we should drop the current attitude that we are carrying, even as members of Parliament, and look at this thing in a futuristic way. You know, it's about a man and a woman, boy and a girl. We probably could find any gender in that situation that needs, you know, the affirmative action, and address it so that we're able to move forward as a society and as a nation.
Right.
And maybe,
yes, Florence,
if you don't mind, Zainab, that I feel like the struggle for gender equity and gender equality in this country is almost like the one we were fighting for independence as a nation. Like, you're almost getting there, then you're not getting there. And so women historically, you know, socially, with the governance structures that are predominantly male, have made it such a difficult scenario to actually push. And you were asking my sister about the other sectors, and you'll find, you know, every time we have at least a woman shows up and we see one, we celebrate. And people ask, why are you celebrating so much? It's because we have seen one of our own. It's only one, but we are celebrating even one win. And so when you tell me, for me, our independence in this country will come when everybody feels like they have an opportunity, because they are citizens of this country, not because of their gender, that they can fully participate in political positions, in, you know, any other economic positions, and contribute to this nation. So freedom is not yet here until we are there as women. Yes.
Yeah, you wanted to add? No. All right. So I think one of the arguments that we've continued to hear with regard to this is that the women who have managed to get into the positions that we've seen, you know, the likes of Gladys Wanga, the other elected leaders, Governor Anne Waiguru, that they fought for those positions. That why, you know, and we've had, you know, people come up with the phrase that why can't they fight for the position on the ballot instead of, you know, waiting to be given a positions through legislation. And what would be your thoughts on the same?
Purely when it comes to women in leadership, be it in political spheres or otherwise, you would find that our male, the male dominate the spheres, so purely they don't want to encourage women. So if you're a girl child or a woman who comes out firmly to fight for the rights of a girl child, a woman in leadership, purely you're faced with a lot of opposition. You've seen that happen even at primary schools, high schools, at all levels of life. So when we see these women leaders who have gone before us, who have fought for this space, they are cutting actually the trees for us, they are shaping the way for us. We really need to encourage each other and hold other girls' hands and other women's hands, pull them to this level to create the numbers, because we already have the numbers, but we are not well represented at that level. So when we look at the likes of those women who were there when we were kids, the Grace Ndete, Niva Mwendwa, the Phoebe Asios, and the kind of struggles that they went through, we are purely encouraged as young women leaders that we can make it. If they did, we will. And from where we sit, the gaps are manageable, but I would like to emphasize on the speed, because having tried it 9 times, we need to get it right this time round.
All right.
Yeah, Zainab, I think we need to appreciate the progress we've made so far. You know, with the governors, female governors in place, 3 senators now on board, and around 28, 29 constituency member of women constituency member of parliament, the women who have been elected in a constituency. I'm saying this because personally, my experience running for an affirmative seat, which is purely meant for women. Indeed, that itself has attracted its own challenges, because there's always intrigues and, you know, influence coming from clan structures, you know, male wanting to decide who should be this woman to be elected for this position. If affirmative seat itself attracts that level of interference, you can imagine when you're competing with a man, you know, as a governor, as a senator, or as an MP.
The playing field is not leveled.
It's never leveled. So as we push to realize the 2/3 gender rule, I think we should also take a break to celebrate the little progress that we've made so far. That is why my sister here is saying, for us, you see one woman having achieved something in any sphere, whether social, political, or economic, we celebrate. We celebrate because we know how the struggle looks like. It's never easy. So if you see Governor Waiguru, if you see Gladys Wanga, those are the people who keep the hope alive for us. So the struggle is on, and that is why we are saying if we can have the political goodwill, whatever formula that they will present to us, as long as it will help us realize the truth that we are ready as members of parliament to positively look at it and ensure that it goes through.
And looking at that memorandum that was sent by the head of state, that was in December of last year, as we wait for the resumption of Bunge next week, the key issue for him is, of course, to ensure that this bill has been implemented and enacted in Parliament as soon as possible. The President, while campaigning, he pledged and promised the women of this country that we'll be able to enact the 2/3 gender rule within 100 days of him being in office. That hasn't happened. However, he made sure that he sent that memorandum to both speakers of the National Assembly and the Senate. Florence, when we're looking at this and that move by the President, do you gain some sense of, optimism and hope, perhaps?
The beauty of women, we are always hopeful. Nothing can put us down until we get what we want. And maybe just before I respond to that, I could talk about what you said, the women who've gone before us. I think it's important to also realize that these women who've gone before us, if you look at their trajectory, you'll find somebody like Governor Waiguru. She was first a minister, isn't it?
Correct.
Yeah, so she was in a leadership position, and that empowered her to even go for that seat. You find somebody like Gladys Wanga, she was in the affirmative action seat that prepared her for leadership. And so many women, you will find even when you go to VAI, and Mheshimiwa will tell you that you're being, first of all, women are always asked to be tried and tested first before they are proven. But a young man will show up and they'll just say, yeah, he's a man, let him just go. Not even being tried and tested. But women, the society always wants to try and test you first before they even give you a position. So all these women, if you see, there's a thread with them.
And that's why I appreciate, sorry to cut you, that's why I appreciate the nomination that have been given to women currently. If you look at most of them, they've moved from nomination to, an elective seat, or they moved from an affirmative seat and they went all through to compete with men.
Yeah, even Governor Cecily Mbarire, same case. She was nominated in Parliament. She has run for office after that MP position, and then she has gone back and become a governor. There is a trajectory. For women, it always seems that the society wants to try you first. And so that first opportunity is what we are asking for. Give women that first opportunity and see how far they can go. Because society will still expect us to be tried first for us to go to the next level. Now, coming back to what the President has shared with Parliament, I am hopeful. I am hopeful that we will get it right this time with Mheshimiwa here, and hopefully we can rally others to look at it beyond any politics, but to look at it in the fact that we have failed the women of this country, we have failed the special interest groups. Let's do something about it. Let this Parliament be the one that turns the wheel for this country in terms of women leadership or political participation. So I am hopeful. That's the space where I am.
All right. Yeah. And are you hopeful? Because I'm just getting that document right now by the head of state, so that I can read out part of the statement that he made in that memorandum with regard to the same. But are you optimistic?
Yes, indeed. I am, as a person, because I believe in one, we could have traveled in pain before, but what makes a difference in this life is the midwife. So I believe, in as much as I'm not a Kenya Kwanza person, but because I vied last year as a member of Parliament for Thika on an ODM ticket, and from where I sit as a leader, what he said yesterday or the day before yesterday is that once the bill is passed, he'll be able now to implement. Once we do it as a country collectively, yes, we are very hopeful, and that in that this midwife, if he makes just this one for us as women, if this passes this time around, we will have women well represented at all spheres. So purely, yes, I am optimistic about it. I believe in the women that we have in the parliament, plus our men counterpart. They're going to support us pass this bill. We are going also to lobby from where we sit. We are going to speak out and make sure that we achieve it.
Well, there's always been that call for political goodwill. Every time we spoke about the two-thirds gender issue, one of the biggest key things that would come out is there is no political goodwill, and it is indeed true, because we've seen it in parliament, because they are our political leaders. But with this, do you think now we have the political goodwill?
Yeah. Yes, I would want to say yes for now.
Yeah.
But wait until we get there, because purely what happens thereafter there is what you don't understand. What happened in the 12th parliament, the 11th and the 10th, the 13, this is the 13th, the 12th, the 11th and the 10th is equally the same, because we know the need, it is well enshrined in our constitution. What happens during this midwifery period is what we don't get right. But this time round, I believe there's political goodwill, because we have enough numbers. Apart from the gap we have of women represented in the parliament, we are having a gap of almost 12. Let's see what happens.
All right. Florence, political goodwill, yes, no?
Yes. Yes, for two reasons. One, there's even a proposal on the floor.
Right.
Because before it was, let's discuss and get a proposal.
So this,
this
is a very important thing, yeah?
So before it was a discussion in parliament to create something. But now there's a proposal. I remember asking the president before the election, asking him 2 questions for women. What are you going to do about two-thirds gender role, and why didn't you do it before? And the second question I asked him is, what are you going to do around SGBV, because it's a big deal for us. And he said, when I get to power, I'll get a formula. And so here is a formula, and so it's there. So for me, first, he has honored his word, because I personally asked him that question, and he's talked about a formula. Number 2 reason why I think there's political goodwill, we have the office of Honorable Harriet Chigai, Women's Rights Advisor, and she's championing this as well. She's the one she's called women in civil society, explained the formula, she's gone round and talked to people. So it's up to Parliament. She's spearheading this, the president is spearheading this. Women in civil society, we are like, you know what, we will back you up, we are here standing, let Parliament get it right. And so for me, I believe there's political goodwill. What I'm waiting to see is the political goodwill in Parliament. That's the one I want to see. Are we really interested in the lives of our women or special interest groups? That is what will play out in the floor of the House.
Walking the talk, you mean, on the ground, you know, they say, between different, but now we have to
why your ground, so we want to see what ground your Parliament, what is going to happen.
Yes, Zainab, I also want to believe there's goodwill, especially at the topmost level, president level, because this is the second time that yesterday was the second day that I've had him speak about realizing the two-thirds gender rule. And, you know, trying to rally support of members of parliament once the proposal gets to the House. So for me, I want to believe on the executive side, they've shown and they've demonstrated that they are ready to address the issue as soon as possible. And I think it's for us, the parliamentarians, to honor that that goodwill, and, you know, not to lose the momentum. So like she said, I'll be so ashamed if we fail on our part. And I'm hoping and praying that the proposal that is coming forth will not fail, because as members of parliament, we are not able to agree, or we are not able to support, or we are not able to push it to the level where we can actually put this matter to rest.
Looking at the data by the National Gender Inequality Commission, in terms of the numbers of the women that were being elected in Parliament this time, they're talking about a 30% increase, right, in terms of the number of women elected from single constituencies. In 2017, we had 23 who were elected. This means that even with the 47 representatives and nomination slots set aside for women, the National Assembly, which has 349 MPs, will only have 80 women. In the Senate, only 3 women senators were elected in the 47 counties. This also means that the Senate, which comprises of 67 members, including the nominated ones, will only have 21 women senators. Although with this, this marks an increase in terms of the number of women that have been elected into parliament, then with this memorandum in place and with that increase in number of women, maybe they can be able to, rally their male counterparts in achieving this.
May call it slight increase.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, it's very minimal.
Small margin.
Remember, we celebrate small wins.
Right.
Yes. So please, when you say increase, it sounds very huge. It's actually very minimal. My sister, you can go ahead.
Yes, really, indeed, that's progress, but we are still lagging behind. Purely from when this constitution was promulgated to date. Yes, there are those baby steps, but I think it's time that it is fully realized so that we are able to get there and meet the threshold. Being a country that commands the huge GDP within the EAC, it's a big shame. From where I sit, it's a big shame when you meet other women from other countries, when we go for All Women Leaders Summit, and you find that you're not able to respond quite well when it comes to why aren't you able to achieve this third gender role in your country. So this time round, I think as a panelist, as my lady has said, we need to rally behind them. Let's make sure this time around we get it right, now that there is a bill already in Parliament.
All right, let's go back just a little bit back in terms of looking at the consequence of the non-implementation of this bill. Before we even get to yes, all right, we're optimistic that this will happen. We've always been optimistic all those 9 times, but here we are again, still optimistic that this will be enacted. Let's go back to the consequence. All right, so when there's an argument that why do we need this bill, there is certainly a reason why. When we're talking about underrepresentation of women, okay, you're underrepresented, but what are the consequences of this underrepresentation? Political representation and also representation within the other sectors in the country. What is the consequence?
Purely the consequences will be purely there. Why do I say that? Is because when we are not well represented, we will still remain marginalized. We feel that we will not be well represented, and so men will always dominate these spheres. And
some would say, is it a bad thing?
Yes,
it is a bad thing.
Very bad thing because Zainab,
yes,
we are talking about addressing power imbalance here. By addressing power imbalance in political space, it will have effect on other spheres as well. The moment you address power imbalance in a political sphere, that means the same will be felt, the impact will be felt in social and economic spheres. As long as we are not going to address imbalance in political space and we don't give women opportunity to sit at the decision-making table, then there will be no growth when it comes to social and economic sectors. So it is all tied. It is all tied.
Right.
And the other thing, of course, we will get ourselves into constitutional crisis. Because the constitution demands and requires that we secure an affirmative action and ensure that at any given time for elective or appointive position, there is no one gender getting
more than two-thirds.
More than two-thirds. If we don't fulfill that, that means as a country we are not committed to what our constitution says and the international, regional, and other instruments that we've committed ourselves to.
Right.
Yeah. Also, the parliament should be dissolved. Remember, during CJ Maraga, he actually ruled that government should be dissolved until it is constitutionally constituted. So if it is not, if we don't go through, because as it is, we are not constitutionally constituted.
So what does that mean for us? Because yes, when that happened, that was in 2015, I believe. Yes, 2015, and the CJ had directed that Parliament be dissolved. It was a suggestion, but that
it was a ruling. So
it was a ruling.
It was not a suggestion. It was because he has to give. Given the case that had been presented.
To court. It was a ruling, but nothing really happened. Parliament was not dissolved. So then, where does that leave us?
because then I will test the president's political will on that one. Because he's supposed to call, the parliament should dissolve because it is not constitutionally constituted. But you have an opportunity as parliament, if parliament is watching, represented by my sister, to make it right so that we don't go that route. Because if we claim to be a country that follows the rule of law, then that should be the first thing we do. And I know we have suffered not just because of, I think we get ourselves in this mix because we fail at party level. Parties, and IEBC also failed women for me, because they had an opportunity to reject the lists that were coming from parties to say, excuse me, they've not met the constitutional threshold. And then force parties to be able to get this right from the party level. So that as we move to the electorate level, then we have put almost enough women on the ballot, on the final ballot, for people to choose. But you see, parties would see even a seat they know they will get, whether they'll get whether they campaign or not. They were not putting those seats, you know, for women within their parties, not because they didn't have women within their parties. And so we have failed at party level, and I pray we don't fail at the parliament level.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so when we're talking about the political parties, their role is quite instrumental in ensuring that we begin there in enacting this particular bill. But it is indeed true that political parties have failed in this. What do you think, you know, if you were to advise the political parties right now, what can they do? Where do they begin in ensuring that there is that parity on gender? And
I would like to say that indeed, from where I sit, much needs to be done.
Do they put legal, or, you know, within their own political constitution, do they have to put it as, you know,
in
as
the constitution,
law?
the party constitution?
Right.
Yes, they should. And from where I sit, yes, indeed, women were encouraged to vie. But the moment to get to nomination, that is where the game changes. You'd find that women would show up and show interest in vying, but when it comes now to party alignment, you find that men dominate. Why? Because they feel that if I'm vying as a member of parliament of certain area, and I'm vying against 10 or 5 men, you'd find that always men will always be given an opportunity to pay first, and when you go for nomination, you're not able to handle men at that level. So I feel that there's need for political parties to make sure that they safeguard the interest of women at that level, and make sure that they get to the ballot, other than just waiting to nominate them through the boardrooms. We need to go through the ballot. Yes.
All right. Mheshimiwa Mumina, but political parties, even if this was within the constitution, and even with the directive from the courts in ensuring that this begins within the political parties, as a member of a political party, where is the challenge?
I think, speaking of goodwill, we also need to look at goodwill at political party level. Beginning with the leadership of the party. How do we value and accommodate women when it comes to leadership of the party? In its operationalization, how do political parties, you know, deliberately create space for women? In its nomination, how do they work, you know, in a deliberate way to ensure that women actually get the space to compete, you know, fairly, first of all, and also put in place affirmative action to ensure that women get nominated by political parties to vie on the party ticket. Because what we observe every other day is, you know, where direct nomination is given to a male counterpart and a woman is promised a nomination, which sometimes never happens. So why don't you give this woman who is willing to compete with the man the platform to do it? Because as you put it, the slight improvement that we progressively making on realizing 2/3, it's because women are not so much interested in nomination. They are willing to compete as long as the environment is sanitized, as long as the ground is leveled, as long as there is goodwill. We are ready to compete. We might not even need those nominations to realize the 2/3 gender rule in the near future. So why don't we just make the environment, and the space equal for both men and women,
but
even at party level.
Right.
Yeah.
But that is not the reality.
That's not what we are observing. That's that's not what we are experiencing. Because party decisions, first of all, is dominated by men. There's no voice of women at the top organ of the party.
Right.
Coming down to its way of doing business, again, it's patriarchal, just like our local institutions and traditional institutions. Everything about party probably needs to be relooked so that we manage to address part of the problem in realizing the 2/3 gender rule at party level before we even get to parliament and before we even talk of a formula and all that. I don't know what Florence.
No, I believe that parties, unfortunately, most political parties are afraid or are unable to follow the letter of the law. They know what the electoral rules say. And you will find parties, some parties actually, the smaller parties, were able to tell their women, because they know the financial barrier that women face when they want to run, and paying even the fees. And some parties waived that the fees for women, given the fact that, hey, it has just been recent that women have been able to own, property, inherit property from their fathers. And it's just recently that, when I say recent, Kenyans, please check your history, because it took a while before even women were able to open bank accounts, before even women were able to do business and just make money. And therefore, even having collateral to borrow loans like the men are able to borrow. A man will borrow a loan on your house, take a loan on your house without informing you, and then you go and run for a seat. A woman will not do that. And so the access to finances also is a big barrier. And so parties that were able to waive those fees for women made it easier for women to actually try and spend whatever little they had to campaign. But the same parties also made it very difficult for women to go through, and giving the what they had that I think there's that loose thing that you can tell IEBC that this one is one of our loyal people. That's why we've given him the ticket. So even if I go and say, wait, I won in the nomination at party level, then the party is able to tell the IEBC, but this one is the one who is loyal. That's why we are giving them a ticket. And so
the loyalist is always a man.
And the loyalist is always a man. It's never a woman. So all these things, I think our parties have failed us. And so if we're able to correct at this level and have a formula that works, then we see in subsequent elections, you will see women will prove, because the idea is in future to leave then affirmative action seats for people with disability. Yes, but for now, we need to get to a place of equity. Once we get there, we won't need affirmative seat actions. We'll have it for people with disabilities. Yeah.
And just looking at some of the reactions here, let me pick one. Humphrey Mbugwa saying, women should fight and vote because they are a majority. So there's that sentiment.
No, and he needs to check the IEBC list. Right. 49% are women who are registered voters. 50 point is a percentage for men. So men are
so there's already disparity there.
Plus, we need to do a gender audit of how voting happened, because then you will find few women actually went to cast out their vote. If we did that gender audit, if IEBC could able to segregate data and give us who actually went to vote, you'll find most men went to vote. But also, the other idea is that, not an idea, SGBV plays a role in even women themselves going to vote, leave alone being on the ballot. Because a man, I had two cases that I know of women who's in this Nairobi, not anywhere else. So I don't know what happens in the rural area, where the man hid the ID of this woman.
Right.
And I kept on telling her, have you checked with your husband? She said, no, I've checked with her. And later, when we had a meeting with, couples, and we're saying, some men do this thing. That night she told me he actually had hid it and he gave it to me because of what you said. And so you will find, and these are salient things that we might never know, that women, even sometimes, there's a woman who, because she was voting for a different, or rather she was supporting a different coalition than her husband, her ID was hidden, she was locked up in a room, part of GBV again. For women just to go and vote, even that. So if that is happening in Nairobi, tell me what is happening in Pokot.
I will tell you what is happening in other areas.
Yeah.
I come from north part of this country, where, you know, cultural practice and norms are very much entrenched. And you can imagine what happened last election. And I have a lived experience of that, where elders sat. And this meeting by elders, no woman is supposed to attend. They sat, they had their meetings for over a year. They decided who will go for governorship, who will go for Senate, who will go for, you know, single constituency seats. And there was no participation of a woman, any woman in those meetings. No women participated. And it happened that the best that they picked to run for those positions were all men. So the women were only given...
Except for the women rep seat.
Even the women rep, they had some influence over it. So
no, I'm saying they couldn't pick a man for that one.
The much they did is to communicate to women how to vote and whom to vote. So women are coming from this kind of background. So you can't just say, why can't women just vote themselves? You can't say that. There's a lot of prejudice. There's a lot of cultural and normal norms that, you know, stops women from realizing what we are talking about.
A deeply entrenched system. All right, I'll come back to you, and I know you want to add on to that, but we have to take a quick break here on M Live and NTV. Let's continue with this conversation. The hashtag we're using this morning is M Live NTV at NTV Kenya at Zainab Ismail. Will the 13th Parliament get it right? What more do we need to do in terms of ensuring that there is no underrepresentation on either gender in this country? We're back in a short while. Stay with us.
Unlock limitless potential for your business with Nation Digital Summit, where connections, partnerships, and networking with industry leaders can take your company to new heights. This year, don't miss out on the opportunity to engage, learn, and connect with a global audience as we explore the opportunities around enhancing Africa's digital transformation. Book your slot today for the Nation Digital Summit happening on the 22nd to the 24th of February at the Sarova White Sands in Mombasa County.
Take it slow, baraka zake ukuja tu pole pole. Huyo aliyetenda jana leo atatenda zaidi. Huyo aliyetenda jana leo atatenda zaidi. Atatenda zaidi. Zidi kumwamini zaidi. Atatenda zaidi. Zidi kumwamini zaidi.
To get Zaidi by Jonah Le Parman, dial star 812 star 801 hash. Skiza, Nan Nation.
My name is Sogoti James, General Manager Commercial, Nation Media Group. I'm excited with the forthcoming Season 2 of Man Cave. Finally, men's conference come in the name of Man Cave to discuss the plight, opportunities, strengths, challenges of the man and their real place in society to transform and offer great solutions for the men and the bigger society as it were. This time it will be held in Tigoni, and I will be attending the event, and we invite all men who think their place of prosperity is here, and now let's come and celebrate.
Johannesburg is a very big city.
He's a financial consultant, an author, writer, and renowned publisher whose publications have been bestsellers in the market.
I always had that hunger to be in that publishing space.
Yes, on Daring Abroad this week, Rotok Chesaina shares his 22-year journey in South Africa.
You can make money from writing books.
Also on the show, how Kenyans in the diaspora are investing back home through tailor-made opportunities by Kimisitu Sacco, and what it means for the country.
We are present in 56 countries of the world, so that means we're able to serve our members all over the world.
One thing I like about Kimisitu Sacco is the staff. When I was in China, I could still communicate with them and they would get back.
To protect our family from germs that cause illness when it's cold, we use Dettol soap.
Dettol soap with germ defense gives you protection. When it's cold, germs are transferred in different ways, and Dettol soap's germ defense protects you from up to 100 illness-causing germs. Be Dettol sure.
Claiming your assets is easy. Simply visit UFAA website www.ufaa.go.ke or dial *361# or visit Huduma Center near you.
All right, thank you for staying with us. You're watching Raila Odinga at Matiang'i's home. A couple of lawyers there led by Dansan Omari. We also do have a statement that was made, and of course speaking to members of members of journalists, the press, I beg your pardon. Yesterday we had Suba North Member of Parliament Millie Odhiambo also making a statement on the situation there. However, we're still yet to get more details with regard to what happened. We do not know the reason for the siege, quite not clear at this moment, but this is what some of the people who went there had to say on this issue.
When we got here, we had the information that several police officers had come here to arrest Honorable Matiang'i on some framed up charges, flimsy, let me even say, not just framed up, but flimsy charges. And when we came here, when they saw that a number of people had arrived here, then they have gone and they're hiding behind in the darkness. So we know they're hiding somewhere around, but we're here with a big team of lawyers, and we're here, many members of parliament, to just make sure that the law is followed and the constitution is followed.
We were summoned immediately, and upon us arriving, more than 200 advocates, we sought to send people to identify themselves. They could not be able to identify themselves. We sought for the reason as to how they have invaded the CS's place. There was no search warrant. There was no warrant of arrest. There's no reason known in law for them to invade private property.
Lawyer Dansan Omari there speaking outside the home of the former cabinet minister Dr. Fred Matiang'i. We're still keeping an eye on the situation there, and that's a developing story that we'll be bringing you more updates on when and as we do receive those updates. So away from that, back into our conversation this morning, which is focused on the issue of the 2/3 gender rule question. Well, there's also the issue of the economic aspect, which has also come out on the enactment of this and the calls for the enactment of this bill. One of the biggest issues some quarters have raised is on the economic issue, such that if we increase and expand the members of parliament and the number of members of parliament to accommodate this, you know, representation of both men and women in parliament, that will also come with an economic cost. And what would you say with regard to this?
Purely on matters of the cost that comes with it, everything comes with a cost. Either way, whether we have them right or not, there'll still be costs. And again, we are losing so much money on other issues that really we don't want to raise them here. So when we're having women well represented and we're talking about the cost that comes with it, we need also to know what value do these women add in this society and also in matters the economy of this nation. I believe because we have the numbers, also women grow the economy, they need to be well represented because they earn it. We are not asking for these positions as to be given. We need also to grow our economy, and we have the numbers to do that.
Well, the argument is we are increasing the number of people who will be representing us in Parliament to an already burdened taxpayer. Is that fair? That's the question.
I want to say that it's indeed fair. When we talk about fairness, I don't know where is the thin line between the fair and the unfairness, because as we sit right now already, so much is happening, and our expenditure is equally very high, with or without them. So it is important we have them, then we level it out at that level.
Okay. Yes.
If I could just say something on finances. I think it is more expensive that women are not on the decision-making team.
Correct.
We need to remember as a nation that every time you exclude someone, you will have to work harder to do many things. So, for example, we have...
so do you think it's an unfair assessment?
It is unfair.
It is that the more we expand the Parliament to a taxpayer, you know, who's burdened right now by the economic situation.
The only reason we are talking about even affirmative or even meeting the constitutional threshold is because we failed. We've talked about the issue of parties and not allowing and the cultural system. And so if we got it right at party system, we'll not be having this conversation. We'll be fine. But we didn't get it right. And so the positions that we are saying, if we are able to if we're able to get a 2/3 gender role in through affirmative action, it does not mean it will go on forever. It will get to a point that now we've normalized women leadership, and it will be easy for a mwananchi to say, you know what, wacha nipigie mama kura, because mama is on the ballot. If mama is not on the ballot, how will she be voted for? And so we've failed, we've made it expensive at party level for not having women there. So that is more expensive, what we have right now, because we failed. Now, having this is a corrective measure, which then will ensure that later we balance out. But I think we lose more money in corruption than even saying that we're going to have women on the seats and therefore it will be bloated. The taxpayer is more stressed with the corruption that is in this country than even the issue of representation.
Right.
Yes. So for me, if you remove corruption, the taxpayer will not be feeling the pinch.
Right. Yes, Mheshimiwa.
Yeah, Zainab, I think if we are committed to realizing a robust democratic governance space, then we must also bear the cost. In our constitution, we've implemented and realized so many things, and it all comes with a cost. I don't know why the debate only reappears when we mention the issues of 2/3 gender rule. And like Florence said, there's so much cost that we are already incurring nominating these women.
Yes.
But what about putting a temporary measure in place to get us to a point where we no longer need to nominate them? They can fairly compete and, you know, represent both men and women in Parliament. So you can't sit back and say, this is costly, we can't do it, and continue incurring costs because you want to continue nominating women. Yet you could probably engage to the point where the temporary measures can be in place for a year or, you know, a decade, and then we are all we've normalized the playing ground for men and women to compete. So it's all depends how we want to look at it and how we want to twist that debate. But always those who are against these key, you know, fundamental rights and freedom and that benefits men and women, because it's not for only women, will always want to say it's costly.
And it's an easy route to take, to just say no, it's expensive, so we forget about it. Remember when you're growing up and your father says, you ask something and say, it's expensive. It's not open to discussion when immediately you say it's expensive. And so that's the same...
That we can't afford it.
Yeah, that's the same card we are playing to say, hey, wait, it's expensive. It is more expensive when women are not on the decision-making table. When we are not saying, wait a minute, instead of buying military trucks, let's use that money to fund hospitals. We need to be on the table to say, excuse me, you know, when we give our ECD teachers more money, it makes more sense for our future. But you need a woman there. We needed women to be in parliament for the nation to realize that sanitary towels are important for our girls to stay in school. If women were not in parliament, that bill would not have even been introduced. So that is a thing that women will bring on the table, that when a man sits there, he will not remember because it doesn't affect him.
All right. And
so it will cost us if we don't have women.
So there's value for money.
Yes, it is definitely value for money.
I want you to listen to this next argument, right? So women's presence in politics does not automatically create substantive representation due to two reasons. One, women sometimes tend to be more conservative than men on issues of gender equality. And secondly, a parliament constituted of 50% of women does not guarantee women representation in their socio-economic, cultural, ethnic, religious, and sexual orientation diversity. Do you agree with this?
I'll ask them, where did they do research where 50% of women being in political positions will not guarantee? If you look at Rwanda, you see where they're heading in terms of women representation and what they've been able to achieve economically as a nation. We haven't, so long as we keep on using excuses for not having women being in those positions, then it means we are not ready, or we do not want, or we don't have the goodwill of people to make sure that women are on the table.
Well, they're saying women are more naturally conservative, that being that conservative, they will not be able to push.
What's wrong with being conservative? We have men who are we have men who are conservative.
To push for certain agendas and representing a views of diverse groups.
Every person is in a position to push agendas based on their upbringing, based on their education. And we have men in parliament who are also not very progressive, and they're there and they're not even pushing agendas for their own constituents. So you can't put women in one basket and say they are conservative. Are these women seated on this table conservative? Thank you.
All right, and I want to hear from you.
Purely, indeed, I think it's time that we have the conversation right. And having said that women are a bit conservative, I purely beg to differ, because we are trying to fight for this space because it is well enshrined in the Constitution. So there's a need also for both genders to support and also look at who is saying it is expensive or women are not. It's still the male. So it's time that we achieve it. Mine is, how are we getting there, and how do we break the barriers, and what speed are we going to apply? So we want to lobby for those ones who are in parliament. We need to get it right this time round, both men and women.
All right.
I'm sorry I'm chiming in because it irks me because of what we've gone through as a nation. When we have, we've had men in parliament, I mean, since independence, right? And every time we've had women, many in quotes, since the 2013 election, isn't it? And we've seen some things. We've seen sanitary towels, we've seen things moving. You tell me, these men, since independence, this thing that we keep on saying, oh, the narrative that women are only, they're in parliament, but nothing has changed, nothing has moved. How many are they? How long have they been there in leadership? And how long have men been in leadership? We have men in leadership in their constituencies where nothing has ever moved. Yet they get elected because of patriarchy. And therefore we cannot judge women on the same threshold as men when we don't have equity. And so until we have equity, then you can judge me and say, okay, fine. So you have the same, you are facing the same challenges as a man, you're facing the same challenges as this man financially, culturally, historically, and therefore then we have the same benchmark. That's why I was asking, where did this guy do his research?
And
so that it makes sense for us.
Yeah. So that yes.
Yes, I think Zainab, we should begin appreciating women contribution right from family level.
Thank you.
There's so much that women are doing at family level, at community level, and I don't understand what makes them conservative when they get to national level. The same energy, the same attitude, the same drive is what women bring
they
to
call
the
it
national.
conservative and shy.
You can be conservative and still be impactful. There's nothing wrong with being conservative, like you said. I think what is needed is your voice. When bills are brought to the floor of the House, when policies are made, can we capture women voices? Because they know where the women problem lies. If you leave that to, just men to do it, then we have a problem as a nation. So the thing here is women voice in every decision-making sphere is a must. It's not something that can be wished away. The Constitution is clear on that. And I think we should just forget about any other debate and focus on how to realize the two-thirds so that we're able to have men and women move in one direction on matters of national development.
All right. Just looking at that memorandum by the president, I managed to get it. Let me just read out a part of it. And I'm going to quote the part that the president has insisted on. He says, I therefore propose, in quotes, that if Parliament concurs, a constitutional amendment be enacted, establishing a formula to guide the computation of the gender ratio in the National Assembly based only on the numbers of those members elected from the constituency, that is the National Assembly, and counties in the Senate per Article 97(1)(a) and 91(a) respectively. The proposed amendment can be set out under Article 97(3). And then it goes on to say another modality, because here he gives a formula on how this can be achieved, but he also says another modality of achieving compliance is for political parties to deliberately embark on sustained, institutionalized and robust initiatives. I think we spoke about that facilitate the empowerment of women to successfully contest these legislative seats in greater numbers. And apart from minimizing or even eliminating the necessity of top-up nominations, this modality is superior as it captures the proper spirit of affirmative action. And I think the part that I want to now bring up is this issue of the fund, the political fund. In order to actualize this intention, I further propose that under Article 97(3)(b), existing legislation be amended to establish a women's inclusion and political participation fund. The fund will be drawn from a percentage of funds allocated to political parties and will finance education and training, mentorship and capacity building, as well as support for women seeking competitive elected representative positions. Florence, when we're looking at that, so this is a fund that will be set aside for women if this bill is enacted and becomes law. But then the question of mentorship and training, is that an area now we should be focusing on?
Exactly. I mean, it should start from the ground. The issue of girls' education, we've been pushing for it, and we continue pushing for it. Why? Because teenage pregnancy occurs in children, in girls. Boys, even if they would make a girl pregnant, they'll still go to school, but the girls will not go to school. So the education for girls is critical. Return to school formula for girls is critical. That foundation is critical, so that we come to a place where when they ask you for your degree, you actually have it. So that's one. And then the mentorship. I've seen a lot of CSOs, and last year, I think, because of COVID and everything, people didn't have a lot of financial muscle to support women and just, mentor them in terms of leadership and all that, to be able to get to a place where they're confident enough to say, you know what, I'll even go as an independent candidate. So mentorship is critical, because remember I told you, if there is no equity, we cannot say we have the same, we're in the same, we have a level playing ground. That fund is also critical. Why? Because look at the issue of financing. I've captured, and I hope that maybe once the book is out, I can come here and we can talk about it. But it captures the challenges of financing for women to actually get to, and my sisters here have vied, so they know. the challenges of financing campaigns. It is not easy. Accessing funds is not easy. A man, it will easily, all his brothers will say yes. But you, when you're running, people will be like, hey, what about the children's school fees? Nobody asks the man that. So we don't have the same level playing field. I'd like just to note that Honorable Harriet has just texted the Women's Rights Advice and said, I am watching and I'm loving it. So I'm sorry to say that.
No, we appreciate that. And this is quite important.
Yeah, so the thing is, and the thing is, because we don't have the same level playing field, because men don't undergo FGM and therefore get married off early, because men don't undergo forced marriage, because men will hardly undergo SGBV or domestic violence.
So
in terms of
there's a lot of historical background that has necessitated this particular
that Kenyans needs to see that it is not the same. We could be in the same country, but we're all facing different things as women and as men. So this is very critical. Affirmative action for now is critical. Why? Then it gets us to a certain place. When it gets us there, in future the conversation is, let's have affirmative actions for people with disability. Because when there's mentorship, when there's financing, when the level playing field is leveled, we will get there.
Right.
Yes.
And when we're talking about mentorship, capacity building, training, and ensuring that there's a level playing field, what more can we do in terms of helping? And even as this bill is still in Parliament, as they continue to debate on it, what more can we do as a society?
As a society, indeed, we need to break it down. In as much as you want that affirmative action passed to become a bill and to get the funds, we need to trickle it down right from mashinani at the socio-economic level. We need to empower our girl child right from the age where they understand what is leadership, what is speaking out for themselves, so that we are able to mentor this girl into becoming a woman leader in the future. So far, there is a lot to be done, and so far a lot has been done at the community level.
But there's still much more to be done?
Much more to be done, indeed. And now that if funds will be allocated for the same, for training, for mentorship, for those activities to take place, to create awareness at the community level, we are going to impact positively into these young women who are growing up to become the leaders, whereby, as Florence has said, in the future, we will not have this conversation of the two-third gender rule anymore on matters women per se, but on special interest groups.
When you were vying for the Member of Parliament position, Thika Town,
yes,
how was it for you? Was the playing field unleveled?
Oh, purely that was an uphill task. Oh, mainly because from the wing that we were in, male dominated the spheres. And we were really intimidated at some point. They would even go and purely bring down our posters, send men to follow us. It was not it was not leveled at all. But I thank God that also the security came in and supported women. We were offered security during the campaigns. And I would want to speak out and say next time, that is the next election, we need to have more women participate in these elective positions, whereby we consolidate our synergy as women.
Do you feel like this experience that you had is because of the fact that you as a woman was vying for this position? Is it because you were a woman and you felt like some of this intimidation, harassment was partly because of the fact that, there was that perception that she's a lady, we can intimidate her?
Yes, indeed. That is what men use as a tool. And also their men counterparts sometimes really support them. You'd report matters to men in authority and they'll just look at you as just a woman. Until you get to a different level whereby then authority has to trickle down for them to respect the gender. Yes, we are faced with quite a lot by the mere fact, not because we don't have anything to offer. We have a lot to offer as women leaders.
But it's a mindset issue that we've spoken
Purely,
about.
that is what is disturbing the community and also the male.
All right.
They are not yet in a position to appreciate the way the woman is evolving and what this woman is becoming. I think they are a bit...
they're stuck.
They're stuck, and also somehow they don't want it to happen because at the speed that we are evolving at, it will take them by storm.
Right.
Yes.
As we wind up, and I'll take last comments. I'll begin with you, and as we move forward, and Parliament is resuming, like I said, their sittings, and of course a lot of attention will be focused there in terms of, among many other issues, will be this, which is a key agenda for this country and for the Kenya Kwanza government as well. As a woman leader within the political and governance space, what is that one key issue for you as we push for this bill to be enacted in Parliament? What is that one key issue for you you hope that will be raised?
My key issue would be, it will be of much importance if we pass this bill. I would really plead with the members of the Parliament to consider that, and more so since it's like our last option. We don't have any other time. Otherwise, we are going to be working against our constitution. So purely with the moment we pass this bill and then we bring more women into leadership, we are going to achieve so much that is entrenched in our constitution. And apart from that, we bring more women in the spheres of leadership at all levels. So purely, I would beseech the parliamentarians, this time round, don't let us down. We are really waiting so as to get these funds to trickle it down, and also to bring women into leadership and deal with all these other matters at the socio-economic level. That is where the bone of contention is. We plead with them because also they look at the midwife at the moment, and how the midwife conducts him or herself is what determines whether this child will be born alive or stillbirth. We are hoping to get this child alive.
All right. Yes. Mheshimiwa Mumina, your last remarks on this?
Yeah, I think we need to appreciate, first of all, the fact that at the topmost level, the president seems to be committed to this cause. The fact that within the first 6 months, he was able to bring back this conversation and, write to Parliament and say, hey, let's begin on this, gives us hope. And I'll be so ashamed if we get to kill these at the House, at Parliament level. So it's my hope and prayer that we will be able to rise to the occasion and do what we are required to do. But also, as we do that, the civic education that needs to happen, for people to appreciate that women leadership is not something we should be scared of. Beginning at family level, community level, institutions, both formal and traditional ones, we should begin to appreciate and, allow women to be part and parcel of decision making at all those levels, including where we sit as members of Parliament. Because any proposal that comes to, ensure that we realize the 2/3 should not threaten anybody. I mean, we are a society that is progressive. We are looking into the future. We want to be proud of our daughters and our sisters and our mothers, and we should always be happy to have them at the decision-making table. Right. There's no threat at all. So if we look at it that way, then we'll be able to move forward.
And Florence, just hypothetically speaking, this fails in Parliament once again. Just not preempting what the outcome will be, but hypothetically this happens. What then happens?
Florence, you should be hopeful.
I'm an optimist. That's where I'm going. I'm an optimist, and I want to believe, and I believe in the power of the tongue, that it will go through. And I want to urge Kenyans, wherever you are, the member of Parliament who's representing you. Find his number or her number. Call her. Send text. Send a letter to their inboxes in Parliament. Tell him that you want this to happen for you and for the future of your girls and for the future of this nation and for the future of development. And to urge my sisters in Parliament, represented here, that this is our time to shine. This is our time to do it right for our other sisters. Because you suffered before does not mean your sister should suffer. Let's make sure that we make it possible for all of us to be on the table, men and women, to be on the table. So Zaina, I'm afraid to say I'm not looking at how it is failing. I'm looking at how it is passing, because then when such happens, I think civil society movement and every other people who have been on this case since we began asking for what is our right, we will have to do something. If it means we go to the streets, we will go to the street. Because if our members of parliament are not representing us the way we want to be represented, then what are they there for? Thank you.
So that will be, we have to wait and see now. Will they walk the talk? All right, thank you so much. Florence Mashir, gender equity champion, and Makobo, founder of Impact on Lives Africa, as well as Momina Bonaya, Isiolo County woman member of parliament. Thank you so much for coming in this morning to have this conversation. But let's continue talking. The hashtag we're using is MLiveNTV at NTV Kenya, at Zainab Ismail. But don't go away. Your World is coming up shortly with Winnie Lubembe. You do not want to miss that. My name is Zainab Ismail. Thank you so much once again for watching, and we'll continue bringing you more updates with regard to what is happening with the former cabinet secretary, that is the former Interior Cabinet Secretary, Dr. Fred Matiang'i, on that alleged arrest yesterday. Well, there has not been arrest, but we still are trying to get more facts, more information on exactly what happened. We did see the ODM leader Raila Odinga there, and we heard from the legal counsel Dansan Omari, as well as the Suba North Member of Parliament Millie Odhiambo, on this issue. So we are still trying to get more details on the same, and we'll continue bringing you information in our subsequent broadcasts from 11 a.m. You want to stay tuned for that. Have yourself a good morning, good day.